So this is the most basic way that we can use the exercise. So we're coming across the short and long sides of the arena, so across the centre. And it should be a normal one stride through the outer poles and then come to a two stride through the box. Some horses might take 3 in there. And then a one stride to exit. And we see that it encourages Pointy to put him into a rhythm through the exercise rather than him being able to rush through that centre box. It encourages him to have to work into a bit of a rhythm through the centre box. And because it's not putting him into those regular strides, it builds up his proprioception, so his awareness of where his feet are. When a horse trots through a line of 3 strides, it's very laid out for them. But with a box where they've got to take 2 steps in an area where it's not strided out, it improves their awareness of where their feet need to be. So as a rider, what I'm working on when I come into this exercise is having Berry into a balanced contact in my hand. I'm trying to use my body to encourage her round the turn. I want her to seek forward into the contact and travel forward through the neck, keeping her balanced in the shoulders. Using my body again round the turn. Good. Encouraging her to seek forward and out in the neck. So with this horse particularly, because she's quite sharp, we want her to settle down as quickly as we can into the exercises. And by letting her just come into a calm mode with her body, we can get her really lifting up through the chest. Good girl. The more her head is lifted, the more she's going to behave in a more irate and hot manner. The more she reaches out and stretches through the neck into a nice contact in the hand, the more she'll settle into what we're doing. Ooh. Ooh. Good girl. Ooh. So this, the second part of this exercise is using the diagonal lines across and the corners of the box. So each line of the diagonal is set to a slightly different stride. So this stride is ever so slightly shorter. So we've put 4 what we would call pigeon feet or human feet in those spaces. And then the second of the 2 lines is strided to 5, which is for these 2 horses a slightly heading towards a medium trot. You can of course adjust that to your own horse. So if you've got a 16-2, you're going to need those strides to be bigger. If you've got a 14-2, then you might need them to be smaller than that to allow for a medium trot. And we're using the changes of rein, so exactly as Emma is showing here, we're coming from both ends of the school so that we're really utilising the exercise and all the different ways you can enter it. So Emma's just asked Pointy a little bit round that corner to open up so that he's ready for the fact that he's got to push his stride out through these poles and take a bigger step. Brilliant stuff. Now the box in the centre you're able to canter through it, so you can set each of those diagonal lines out to a canter stride so that you can really start to build your horse's medium and collected canters. You can of course adjust them to a true collected trot or a true collected canter, and same with the medium and extended paces. So really this is adjustable to whatever stride you're working towards. So we see Pointy just coming through there because he's still got a little bit too much speed. He's just knocking those poles. That's it, so steady him. So what Emma's done there is immediately represented to those collected poles so that she can get him together a little bit more. So by working from the short to the long, we're working on the adjustability. But if your horse finds that hard, of course you need to make that exercise easier for them so they don't find it so hard. One of the things that we commonly do wrong as riders is when the horse is finding it difficult, we don't ask ourselves why that horse is finding it difficult. We just try and make them do it and say, well, why are you being difficult? Come on, pick it up, make it. Basically, we push them into doing something that maybe they are finding difficult. Whereas instead, what we might want to do is think about how we can make that exercise easier so that they're more able to do what we're asking them to do. And then we go back to making it more difficult once they're doing it with ease. So for a horse like Pointy, we might just work on the collected stride for a couple of 3 circles so that he becomes much more comfortable at just doing those collected strides. And then when he's better at that, we then ask him to go to the open stride. That's it. So really gather him in here together, Emma. So he's shortened up. Slow your rising. Better. Really good. That was much better. Well done. So what I've asked the rider to do there to try and help Pointy through that exercise is to slow her rising down, slow her rhythm down. Even slowing her breathing down will help to bring the rhythm down in the trot. So you're using your body language to influence the horse. That's it. So even slower in the rising, steady everything. Better. Really good. Well done. And then what we get is more lift in the horse because they're coming slower and finding things easier because they're not rushing through and always on the back step through the exercise. So I'm coming around the turn as a rider, looking exactly where I'm aiming to go through the centre of the pole. I've got my rising nice and slow to encourage Berry into a good rhythm. And again, she's found that a little bit difficult. So I'm just going to represent through the same exercise with her nice and steady. Slow my rising down outside of the exercise as well, just to test that I've really got the adjustability. Often we make the mistake of correcting them too close to the exercise, whereas if we correct them on the way into the exercise, we're much more likely to have success as we trot through. Good girl. So because I know Berry is going to find it difficult through the lengthened strides, I'm going to approach with the longest run up as possible, and I'm going to test getting her opened up over the edge of the school without the poles, just to make sure I've got my go button in place. Often we might expect the horse just to know exactly what we want in the exercise, when really if we've not asked them outside of the exercise, how are they supposed to know what it is that we want them to do? So I take a nice good approach, try and get as straight as possible and allow her with my hand and speeding up my riding to move forward. We were helped with some gumption from tractor power then. Ooh, good girl. And then I'm going to bring her back together around the corner. Bring her back to a steadier trot. And again, giving her plenty of approach so that she can build up a little bit of speed. I allow her forward with my hands first and with my seat first. So I use my body aid and my hands before I use my legs. And then same in the gathering. So I might actually use my body sitting back, slowing my rising before I use my hands to steady her up. Good. Good. And then again round the corner I gather her together on the approach, slow my rising. Look where I'm approaching, try not to fall over. Good. Well done, Berry. Good. So here we're going to start to use the curved line element of this exercise. So because we have set this up to have a shortened and a lengthened stride, we are going to approach on the shortened stride because it is a bit of a sharp turn when you get in there. It comes up a lot quicker than you might think. So you want your horse to be as together as possible. So there, it's a really easy way where Emma just showed there to escape if you can't quite make the turn. Taking them out over that central element is absolutely fine. So brilliant on her second presentation. She's really got him to turn. And we also saw over the second part of those poles how much elevation he gained in his body, because he really had to curve through and shorten up his underline, and therefore gained a lot more stride. And again, so Emma just needed to escape, but it's perfectly safe and easy to do so by coming out of that straight line approach. So this option that we're about to demonstrate is a slightly easier way that you can make a turn through. So we're going to come up through the box element of the exercise and then turning either left or right, depending on whether we want to work on an open stride, as we did to the left there. And then we're going to then work towards the right side, where we're going to come out in a slightly more gathered trot. So for a horse at the stage that Pointy's at in his training, this is a really brilliant way that you can work him. So this comes back to what we talked about earlier, where if the horse is finding the exercise difficult, instead of forcing him to go through it, we've quite rightly decided to make that exercise slightly easier to suit where he is at in his training. Because the last thing we want to do is stress out the rider, stress out the horse by forcing them to do something that's too difficult for that horse at that point in his training to achieve. So rather than sweat over the fact that he's finding it hard, we just make it easier. It's a really, really common problem and mistake I see in lots of training programs and lots of riders, is that the horse is made to do the exercise that we want them to do, rather than us building the exercise around what your horse is capable of at that time and adapting your training to suit what's in front of you. So because when I rode through this exercise earlier, Berry found it much easier to go through the slightly collected poles, I'm going to first take the turn to the collected side so that she has a nice experience going through those poles. And again, I'm looking for my line and where I'm wanting to approach from, aiming for the middle. And then this is a slightly bigger trot. So because she finds those slightly collected strides easier, I'm just going to change the rein so that we can come in from the collected side. Good. So we see there how Berry really had to reach out through her stride and step through. And that's exactly what we're wanting it to do. And then as she rode out the exercise, as a rider, I feel she's much lighter in the hand and coming through over the back more to the contact, because she had to step out of her comfort zone slightly. Good. So a way you can make this exercise slightly easier for them on the turn is by keeping them into a 20-metre circle, so that they're already heading onto that left turn. So I'm going to change the rein now and come from the slightly longer strided poles, which Berry finds a little bit more difficult. So this whole exercise might be slightly more difficult for most horses, because you're going from a bigger trot stride to a more collected trot stride, which is not as easy to achieve. And Berry found it hard. So we say, well done, good try. But maybe we try again in a second. We give her one more try. Good. So again, Berry finds that hard, coming from the slightly bigger side to the collected side. So what we'll do is we'll reapproach, coming from the collected side to the bigger stride, so that she doesn't feel like the exercise is difficult and she doesn't feel bitter towards doing it in the future. Come. Because the last thing we want her to do is have a bad experience having done these exercises today. So we make it easier. And Berry is able to do that. It's probably also related to the fact that she finds it harder to turn to the right, so that's something for us to work on at home.